September 14th, 1989, Gloucestershire countryside, 2:17 a.m. The sound of shattering glass pierced the quiet night as Princess Diana brought a cricket bat down on the windshield of Camilla Parker Bowles' Range Rover with savage satisfaction. For months, she had endured the humiliation of her husband's affair, the whispers, the lies, the careful avoidance of truth. But tonight, Diana's composed facade had finally cracked, unleashing a fury so intense it would terrify even those closest to her. As she stood over the destroyed vehicle, breathing heavily in the moonlight, Diana whispered the words that would haunt Camilla for years. "Let's see how you explain this to Charles, you pathetic cow." What drove the people's princess to such an act of desperate vengeance wasn't just jealousy. It was the discovery that Camilla had been bragging about stealing Charles away from his weak little wife. But Diana's attack on the car was just the beginning of a secret war that would consume both women for years. The breaking point. September 13th, 1989, 8:30 p.m., the phone call that changed everything. Diana's descent into vengeful rage began with a phone call she was never meant to hear. She had returned early from a charity event and was walking past Charles's study when she heard his voice through the partially open door. "Darling," Charles was saying into the phone, his voice tender in a way Diana hadn't heard directed at her in years. "You're absolutely right about Diana. She is becoming rather tiresome with her emotional displays." Diana froze in the hallway, her blood turning to ice as she realized Charles was talking to Camilla. I know, Charles continued with a laugh. "Your patience with this whole situation has been extraordinary. I don't know how much longer I can pretend to be the devoted husband when what I really want is to be with you." Diana pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding as she listened to her husband mock their marriage with his mistress. "She caught us again last week, didn't she?" Charles said. "The way she looked at you at that polo match, if looks could kill, you'd be 6 feet under." What Diana heard next would send her over the edge, Camilla's laughter echoing through the phone speaker, followed by Charles saying, "You're terrible, Camilla. But you're right, she really is pathetically jealous. It's almost embarrassing to watch." Diana had heard enough. Her hands shaking with rage, she walked away from the door and directly to her private sitting room, where she sat in the dark for 3 hours, planning her revenge. Don't miss this shocking revelation. What Diana discovered about Camilla's secret boasts. The humiliating discovery. September 13th, 1989, 11:45 p.m. Diana's secret intelligence network. What Charles didn't know was that Diana had been building her own network of informants for months. Palace staff, friends of friends, even some of Charles's own acquaintances had begun feeding Diana information about his affair with Camilla. That night, after overhearing Charles's cruel conversation, Diana made a series of phone calls that would reveal the true depth of Camilla's arrogance. Her first call was to Lady Sarah McCorquodale, her sister, who had her own connections in Camilla's social circle. "Sarah," Diana said, her voice deadly calm, "I need to know everything Camilla has been saying about me. Everything." Sarah's revelations were devastating. At a recent dinner party, Camilla had reportedly said, "Poor Diana simply doesn't understand that Charles needs an adult woman, not a needy child. She's so desperate for his attention that it's actually quite tragic." But the most humiliating disclosure came from Diana's friend, Carolyn Bartholomew, who had heard from a mutual acquaintance that Camilla had been openly mocking Diana's appearance and personality. "Diana," Carolyn said reluctantly, "she's been telling people that Charles only stays with you out of duty, that he finds you physically disappointing. She's been saying that you're too immature for royal life and that everyone knows Charles would rather be with her." The final straw came from an unexpected source, Diana's own hairdresser, who had overheard Camilla talking at a salon. "Your Royal Highness," he said during a late-night phone call, "I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Mrs. Parker Bowles was here today. She was telling another client that she doesn't understand why you even try to compete with her for Prince Charles's attention. She said, and I quote, 'Diana can throw all the tantrums she wants, but Charles will always come back to me because I give him what she can't, sophistication and understanding.'" Diana listened to each revelation in silence, her anger building like pressure in a volcano ready to explode. You won't believe what Diana did to prepare for her revenge. The surveillance operation. September 14th, 1989, 12:30 a.m., Diana's secret stalking mission. After learning the extent of Camilla's mockery, Diana decided that public humiliation required private preparation. She had discovered that Camilla was attending a dinner party at Middlewick House, just 15 minutes from Highgrove, and Diana saw her opportunity. Diana told her protection officers that she was going to bed early with a headache and dismissed them for the night. Once alone, she dressed in dark clothes, grabbed a torch, and slipped out of Kensington Palace through a service entrance she had scouted weeks earlier. She drove her own car, a blue Ford Escort she kept for private use, to Gloucestershire, following the route she knew Camilla would take home from the dinner party. Diana had been planning this moment for weeks. She knew Camilla's schedule, her route home, even where she liked to park her Range Rover when visiting friends in the area. This wasn't a spontaneous act of rage. It was a calculated mission of revenge. She positioned herself in a grove of trees near the narrow country lane that Camilla would have to use to reach her house. For 2 hours, Diana waited in the darkness, her anger sustaining her through the cold September night. At 2 a.m., she saw the headlights of Camilla's distinctive green Range Rover approaching. Diana's heart pounded as she watched Camilla park the car and walk toward the front door of her friend's house, where she was apparently staying the night. The moment Camilla disappeared inside, Diana emerged from her hiding spot. Standing next to Camilla's prized vehicle, Diana felt a surge of power. For months she had felt helpless, watching her marriage crumble while Camilla triumphantly stole her husband. But now, she held all the control. The vengeful attack. 2:15 a.m. Diana's explosive fury. Diana's attack on Camilla's car was methodical and devastating. She had brought a cricket bat from Highgrove's sports equipment store, and she used it with terrifying precision. The first blow shattered the driver's side window, sending glass cascading onto the leather seats. Diana felt a surge of satisfaction as she imagined Camilla's shock when she discovered the damage. "This is for calling me weak," Diana whispered as she smashed the passenger window. The windshield was next, spider-webbing under the force of Diana's rage. "And this is for mocking my marriage in front of your friends." But Diana wasn't finished. She used the cricket bat to dent the hood, crack the headlights, and scratch deep gouges into the paintwork. Each blow was accompanied by words of fury. "Sophisticated. Let's see how sophisticated you look explaining this. Understanding? Do you understand this, Camilla? Adult woman? What kind of adult steals another woman's husband?" She took her engagement ring, the same sapphire ring that would later become Catherine's, and used it to carve a message into Camilla's windshield. "Homewrecker." Standing back to survey her work, Diana felt a sense of satisfaction she hadn't experienced in months. Camilla's precious Range Rover looked like it had been through a war zone. Don't miss Diana's chilling final message, the calling card. 2:30 a.m. Diana's psychological warfare. Before leaving the scene, Diana decided to ensure that Camilla would know exactly who was responsible for the destruction. She pulled out a piece of Kensington Palace stationery and wrote a message that would haunt Camilla for years. The note read, "Dear Camilla, I hope you enjoyed your evening discussing my shortcomings with your friends. I thought you might like to see what this weak little wife is capable of when properly motivated. Perhaps next time you'll think twice before mocking the mother of the future king. This is what happens when you underestimate me. Sweet dreams, Diana." Diana placed the note under the windshield wiper, securing it with a piece of broken glass. As she drove away, Diana felt a mixture of triumph and terror. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, but she also felt more powerful than she had in months. The woman who had been portrayed as weak and emotional had just demonstrated that she was capable of calculated revenge that would leave her rival feeling vulnerable and exposed. The aftermath. September 14th, 1989. Camilla's shock and Charles's rage. Camilla discovered the destruction when she left for London the next morning. According to witnesses, her scream could be heard from inside the house when she saw her demolished car. She immediately called Charles, who was at Highgrove. The conversation, later overheard by palace staff, revealed the depth of both their shock and their understanding of who was responsible. "Charles, she's completely mad," Camilla reportedly screamed into the phone. "She's destroyed my car. There's glass everywhere, and she's written on the windshield." Charles's response was swift. What did she write? When Camilla read Diana's note aloud, Charles fell silent for several long minutes before saying, "This has to stop, Camilla. Diana's becoming dangerous." But Camilla wasn't interested in stopping. She was interested in retaliation. "Dangerous," she replied. "She wants a war. I'll give her a war. That pathetic little girl has no idea who she's dealing with." Charles tried to calm her down. "Camilla, please, let me handle Diana. This situation is spiraling out of control." "No, Charles, you've been too gentle with her. It's time she learned what happens when you threaten me." The battle lines had been drawn. Diana's attack on Camilla's car had escalated their conflict from secret rivalry to open warfare. The police investigation. September 14th, 1989. The cover-up begins. When Camilla called the police to report the vandalism, she faced an impossible choice: tell the truth about why Diana might have targeted her car, which would expose the affair, or invent a story that protected Charles's reputation. She chose protection, telling police that she had no idea who might have damaged her vehicle or why. The investigating officer, however, wasn't fooled. "Ma'am," he said after examining the damage, "this wasn't random vandalism. This was personal. Someone wanted to send you a message. Do you have any enemies?" Camilla's answer was carefully crafted. "I can't think of anyone who would do such a thing." But the officer's next question put her in an impossible position. "What about this message carved into the windshield? Homewrecker suggests someone believes you've interfered in their relationship. Are you involved with a married man?" Camilla's silence was answer enough. The investigation was quietly dropped after a phone call from Buckingham Palace to the local police chief. The official report stated that the vandalism appeared to be the work of unknown persons with a personal grievance, but everyone involved knew the truth. Diana had declared war, and she had done it in a way that made it impossible for Camilla to retaliate without exposing the affair that was supposed to remain secret. You won't believe how this incident changed Diana forever. The transformation. Diana's dark evolution. Diana's attack on Camilla's car marked a fundamental change in her personality and approach to her marriage crisis. The shy kindergarten teacher who had married into the royal family was gone, replaced by a woman capable of cold calculation and devastating revenge. Those closest to Diana noticed the change immediately. Her former lady-in-waiting described her as suddenly confident in a way that was almost frightening. Diana had discovered her power, the aide revealed years later. She realized that being underestimated was actually an advantage. Everyone saw her as emotional and weak, which meant they never saw her strategic moves coming. Diana began studying her enemies with the precision of a military strategist. She learned Camilla's schedule, her weaknesses, her social circles, and her vulnerabilities. The car incident had taught Diana several important lessons. She could act without being caught if she was careful. Camilla was more vulnerable than she appeared. Charles would protect Camilla even when she was clearly in the wrong. The palace would cover up anything that threatened the royal family's reputation. Armed with this knowledge, Diana began planning a longer-term campaign that would make the car incident look like child's play. The secret war escalates. 1989 Timken Pit. Psychological warfare. Diana's attack on Camilla's car was just the opening shot in a secret war that would rage for years. What followed was a campaign of psychological warfare that pushed both women to their breaking points. Camilla's retaliation came in the form of increased boldness about her affair with Charles. She began appearing at more public events, sending flowers to Charles at official functions, and even calling him during family dinners. Diana responded by documenting everything. She began secretly recording phone conversations, photographing evidence of the affair, and building a dossier that could destroy both Charles and Camilla if made public. The car incident had taught Diana that direct confrontation was effective, so she escalated her tactics. She would call Camilla's house at all hours, hanging up when Camilla answered. She had flowers delivered to Camilla with cards signed "From your biggest fan," messages that carried threatening undertones. She arranged for Camilla's favorite restaurant reservations to be mysteriously canceled. She ensured that Camilla's invitations to certain social events were lost in the mail. Each action was carefully calculated to make Camilla feel watched, vulnerable, and constantly on edge. But Diana's most effective weapon was her public image. While privately waging war against Camilla, she publicly presented herself as the devoted wife and loving mother. The contrast made Charles look even worse, and Camilla even more villainous. The truth revealed. Diana's attack on Camilla's car wasn't just an act of jealous rage. It was the moment when the people's princess discovered her power and decided to use it. The incident revealed several truths about Diana that the public never knew. She was capable of cold, calculated revenge. She had been secretly gathering intelligence on her enemies for months. She was willing to break the law to make her point. She understood psychological warfare better than anyone realized. Most importantly, the car incident proved that Diana was no longer the weak, emotional victim that Charles and Camilla believed her to be. She had transformed into a formidable opponent who would stop at nothing to protect her marriage and her dignity. The cricket bat that shattered Camilla's windows also shattered the illusion that Diana could be safely ignored or dismissed. From that night forward, both Charles and Camilla knew they were dealing with a woman who would fight back, and who had the courage to make her enemies pay for underestimating her. Some revenge is served cold. Diana's was served with a cricket bat and a clear message. The weak little wife was weak no more. The woman who destroyed Camilla's car would eventually destroy the entire royal family's carefully constructed lies. And it all began with one night of beautiful, terrible, justified rage.